This screencast is going to show you how you can use your graphic organizer that we've completed to write the introduction to your multi-genre portfolio. We've been calling the multi-genre portfolio the three text portfolio. They're the same thing. So you've written your three texts, and now you're going to write an introduction to those three texts. And the introduction is going to be kind of like a little mini essay. It's going to be about 150 to 300 words. It might be a little bit shorter if you do everything that the introduction is asking for. It might be a little bit longer. And think of it as a little mini essay introduction to the writing that you've done about your message. So I'm going to go back to my organizer, and I'm going to start with my message. And the first paragraph in my introduction, my little mini essay explaining about my portfolio, is going to be talking about my message. So I wrote, my message is police violence is OOC. That OOC right here just means out of control. So I'm not going to use that abbreviation when I write. I'm only going to use that for note-taking, brainstorming. So here's what I'm gonna write. My message is that police violence is a serious problem that needs to be stopped. And then I'm going to add on a little bit of background maybe. So this problem has been on my mind because of the, let's see. The hardest part about writing this is not making it sound impersonal, as if the people who have been hurt and killed by police violence are just sort of statistics. So I'm going to try to write a little bit more directly. So I'm going to say something like, this problem has been on my mind because I think we have all been shocked by the deaths of Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, and other people who have been victims of police violence. I'm not 100% happy about this because the point isn't that we were shocked. The point is that people died. So I might take this out. So actually I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to take this out. And that gets more to the point. It's not about me. It's about the people who are being hurt by this violence. So then I'm going to say the violence has mostly affected people of color. And I'm going to say if we are to have a just society, we have to find a way to stop this violence at the hands of people, at the hands of the very people who are supposed to protect us. There's my first paragraph, and since this is like a little mini essay, I'm going to indent. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my organizer. And here, I'm going to start writing about my map. Now, it doesn't matter what order you write about your pieces, but you're going to write about each piece. So I've got my map first, and I'm going to say the first piece in my portfolio. You could say the first text in your portfolio is a Google map. I use this Google map to show where people have been murdered by the police. First, I created points and simply wrote the names of the victims and the locations where they were killed. After I got feedback from my students, or I'm going to change that actually. I want to make it clear that the student feedback was what made the difference. My students then suggested adding images and links. So I added a link to an article about Eric Garner. And And okay, so there's my first paragraph about a piece, kind of like my first body paragraph. I'm gonna go back to my organizer one more time. I'm gonna talk about my tweet. And with my tweet, one of the things I thought about was that there's a lot of competing information out there. There's thousands of Twitter streams, and lots of them are very interesting. So I have to try to catch people's attention. And so to do that, I tried to use someone else's writing that I thought was worth sharing. So I linked to an article, which also displayed a rather compelling image of these little boys who are looking out, and there's the policeman. And then a quote that I thought sort of represented the article. So I'm going to write about that. My next piece is a tweet. I linked to an article by Emily L. Hauser. I'm going to actually say about police violence by Emily L. Hauser. The text of my tweet was a quote from Ms. Hauser's article. I chose not to hashtag the tweet with Black Lives Matter because I didn't want to seem like I was taking over a space that was created by and for people of color. However, I did want to share the message of the article, and especially the message of the quote that white people need to speak out against police violence. And I'm going to say something like, if we remain silent, it is the same as saying that the violence is okay. Okay, so that's my tweet. Now, if we go back to my organizer, you see I stopped after the tweet. I also wrote a poem though. So I'm going to scroll down and just show you my poem again. Actually, I finished the poem. The last time I showed it to you, it wasn't finished. So I added just one more stanza. So I wanted to contrast my very happy childhood experience, never worried about if police would shoot me for playing with a toy gun when I was a little boy. And I wanted to contrast that with what has actually happened with Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old boy who died for playing with a toy gun, and Eric Garner, the grandfather who was killed because the police were trying to arrest him for selling cigarettes illegally, allegedly. And so that's why I said, was a cigarette sale worthy of a death sentence? So I wanted to contrast my experience, which is how it should be for everyone, with this incredibly sad experience that these families have had. So I'm actually going to take off the not yet finished because it's finished for now. I might go back and revise it later, but it's finished for the purposes of this assignment. All right, so I'm going to go back now, and I'm just going to write about this poem. So I'm going to go scroll back up, and I'm going to say my third piece is a poem. This was the hardest to write because I wanted to try to keep the emphasis on the people who have been hurt, the murder victims and their families. But I also wanted to show that my experience has been different. I have never been afraid of the police, and I wanted to show that everyone should be able to feel safe as I do. To communicate this, I started with 2 stanzas about Eric Garner and Tamir Rice. So those are these stanzas here. And then I wrote about myself, and then I brought it back to the families. And that's what I was trying to do there. I don't know how successful I was, but that was the idea. So next, I wrote about my own experience. Finally, I concluded with a stanza summing up the idea that the families of the victims know that the police aren't always on their side. Something along those lines. That, and I'm not crazy about this sentence, that how about better would be know that they can't feel safe. Something like that. Okay, so my last paragraph is going to be, what did I learn or discover about myself as a reader, or about the demands of reading different genres, maps, tweets, magazines, Instagram posts, Wikipedia articles, all these different formats we've been working with, and how can this knowledge support my reading and writing in the future? Okay, so I'm going to just wrap this up. I'm going to say I learned from this process how important feedback is. My students gave me excellent feedback on how to improve my map. Adding a link to the Guardian article about Eric Garner improved my map quite a bit. And I don't think I would have had this idea on my own. Okay, and then I'm gonna just add one more sentence. Collaborating really does make for better writing. And then as far as how can I be a better writer and reader, in addition to the idea of collaborating, I think you just have to read a lot. So I also realized that it takes a lot of reading to be a good writer. I need to read more poetry because it will help me to write better poetry. Okay, so that's my introduction to my multi-genre portfolio, my 3-text portfolio. I ended up doing 6 paragraphs, but you can see how short some of these paragraphs are. My longest paragraph's about the poem. Interesting to me because that was the hardest one for me to do and the one I felt the least confident about. And then I wrote 2 paragraphs. In conclusion, you could do yours in 1 paragraph. I thought I had kind of 2 different ideas, so that's why I did 2 paragraphs. But you get the idea. Let's just do a quick word count and see how long my piece is. It is the select. Okay, so mine turns out to be 453 words. Yours doesn't need to be that long. As I said, it could be somewhere between 150 to 300, but this gives you an idea of what your introduction to your writing portfolio, your mini essay, might look like.